there talking about that are their favorite self-direct style accounts are all considered to be a post-tax account. And so when you hear that term, right, what the substitute term a lot of people use is tax-free. They grow tax-free. But I'm going to argue that the traditional IRA is actually my favorite account from a investor standpoint.
Oh, why is that?
So let me explain.
Because it's...
Jeff, have you raised capital before for any type of investments like multifamily, or have you ever borrowed money for notes or anything like that?
I have raised significant amount of capital for multifamily investments. A lot of it came from traditional IRAs, traditional 401ks.
So,
because we could do some magic afterwards.
There it is. So one of the things
Did you say magic?
There is a lot of magic that comes with a traditional IRA and doing a Roth conversion on it.
Anyone want to hear about the magic?
So most of you out there already raised your hand and said you had a pre-tax retirement account, such as a 401k from your previous employer, a traditional IRA, a SEP IRA, right? But you hear us all talk so much about the post-tax account, and it makes you nervous to do those Roth conversions. And it makes you nervous to set up the Roth IRAs. But as investors, don't let that nervous aspect get to you. More of you out there have that pre-taxed account, which is why I consider it to be the more important one for you as an investor, because we can still use those funds for any investments that you might be considering. Is there an argument to be made that the Roth IRA is absolutely better? Yes, because it grows tax-free or post-tax. But most of the people out here don't have those accounts. They have those pre-tax accounts, and that's why I think if that's where the majority of their funds are, that's why that account becomes the most important.
I want to hear from Mary on how you like to invest your accounts also. Both.
So I have a self-directed IRA, and I have a regular IRA that's traditional, and my self-directed is Roth. Now, I started my self-directed IRA by rolling over parts of my traditional IRA a little at a time when I talked to my CPA and said, how much can I convert this year without jumping me up into a higher tax bracket? So I took several years to convert from traditional into my Roth. Now, you need to be passive in your investing with your self-directed IRA because you can't provide services to your IRA. So I personally like to invest mine, what's that? Amen. So I personally like to invest my IRA by doing private lending or owning syndication interests or investing in a fund. I'm very passive because the rules are too scary to me that if you mess up and you blow up your whole IRA, I want to do very passive vanilla things in my IRA and save my creative deals for outside. Now, some people don't do it that way because they want to grow their IRA so aggressively. I don't need to do that, so I'm just, like Daniel said, slow and steady. And I'm getting 12% a year, whatever, that's plenty in my tax-free forever Roth account.
I mean, 12%'s a lot.
Yeah.
Because you guys, how many of you guys think about the rule of 72? Anybody? How often will your money double if you continually earn 12%? 6 years, right? You should be thinking about the rule of 72 all the time.
One thing I wanted to say about the conversion as well, I think I'm right, correct me if I'm wrong, Quincy. When you convert from a traditional to a Roth and you have to pay income taxes on that amount that you've converted, those taxes do not have to come out of your IRA account, correct? You can pay them out of your non-IRA assets.
That's correct.
And you should. And you should, because then you're not reducing your protected amount that's now in your Roth that you're going to go grow tax-free forever. It's tax-free to you. It's tax-free to the people you leave it to. So I would just encourage you to find out how much you could convert without causing undue income taxes, and whatever you do have to pay it out of your non-IRA assets so that you don't diminish the amount in your IRA.
So you talked a minute ago, Mary, about earning 12% doing private lending. I mean, that's fantastic, right? I want to ask how many people in the room are earning less than 12%. Because if you go to like a regular person on the street and say, I earn 12%, they won't believe you, right? It's unheard of.
And 12 is on the lower end of what some of the things
I understand. So the other end of that, though, Mary, and this is for you, is like when you're in between these loans, that money is just sitting there. So like your blended return, if you don't keep your money pretty active, can really go down quick.
Yeah, you definitely, if you're going to be private lending and those notes pay off, you need to have your next borrower lined right up to keep your returned at truly 12% annual, because every day it's not deployed, you're diminishing your returns. Absolutely, absolutely.
Go ahead, Derek. Oh, want to open it up to questions?
Yeah,
No,
does
go ahead.
the audience have any questions? This is for you guys.
Let's hear from you guys. That was a good opening, though, right?
Yeah, don't be quiet.
Who's got a self-directed IRA question?
I do have a question. So we have funds.
Hold it up close. Tell us your name and where you're
My
from,
name's
though I
Lisa
know
J.
you.
I'm from Central Texas. We have funds lent out that are due to be paid back soon, and we do plan to keep them deployed. Do they have to go back into our IRA and start all over, or can we just, they come in and they go out to the next person?
Let's talk about the process for that. That's a great question.
Yeah, so basically, there's a reason that the National Bar Association actually sponsors that, that adult sponsors the pension. Because it's a pension.
Well, let's hear from Derek then, because he's not a lawyer. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead. We got 3 lawyers, and then we got Derek. Lawyer, lawyer, lawyer.
When you pay off a loan, normally it goes back into the IRA and you get redeployed from the IRA. If you're just doing the modifications and extensions, because the same IRA so on the assets, you can do that too. So it just depends on the circumstances.
So normally, the normal process is, I think, when you get it back, it should go back to Quest or into your trust or LLC, wherever it's at, and then redeploy it again. Derek, did you have a different take on that? Derek's the only one up here who's not a lawyer. But he's pretty smart. Oh, another lawyer.
No, it's just as Quincy said. Wherever it came from, it needs to go back to there
I think so.
for both your tracking purposes to measure your accurate rate of return, but also to just follow the rules. Now, if it's the same borrower with the same or similar property, and you're just going to do a modification or an extension, you can probably not have the money come back to you. But I would rather it come back because it's a much cleaner deal
I would too.
to have it come back and then do a new set of deal docs on a new asset with new collateral and so on. And you might be able to bump the rates because when you lent the money, the Fed hadn't jacked the rates up as hard as they had. So maybe you can play, well, the Fed's raised rates so much and they're not going to cut them right away, so I got to get 14 instead of 12.
So one thing that I've seen before is if you have an IRA-owned trust or LLC, that your IRA has funded that and it owns that, and let's just call it an LLC. That LLC can now be the lender. So when that loan pays off, the money comes back into the LLC checking account and then goes out to the next loan without having to go all the way back to Quest, for instance. So, but it's still going back, as Jeff said, wherever the money first came out, it goes back to the lender. In that case, there's just an intermediate step, which is the LLC owned by your IRA or the trust owned by your IRA.
So there's a reason I'm assuming you asked the question. And the only reason people ask that question is for 2 reasons. A, they don't want the funds to go back to their IRA because they don't want to have to go through the custodian again to deal with fees. The second reason is they don't want to have to go through and deal with all the paperwork for a second time. Is that a safe assumption? No. Now, I saw you in the gray shirt right here nod your head yes to that. But so why would you not want the money to come back then? Okay.
She's learning. It's her first loan. Is it your first loan? All right.
So
well, that's
the
a
reason I'm
great
saying that
question.
is you should always have those funds come back. And if you're one of those people out there that's like, man, I just don't want to have to sit here and deal with a direction of investment again with the custodian. I don't want to have to deal with the attorney paperwork. I don't want to have to deal with the custodian fees. Pass all that crap off to the borrower. Like, that's it. Right? It's this, yeah.
So, all that stuff. Yeah, coordinating. So
That's all
when
passive.
I
There's no
loan,
work.
I loan directly out of my IRA. I don't have an intervening trust or LLC. And so I do, the money goes out, the money comes back in, the money goes out to another loan. One of the reasons I like that too is because my portal on the custodian's website keeps track by loan, by asset. So each promissory note is a different asset. And if I want to know if you're my borrower, where I stand on that, I can click on that asset and see when the last check was deposited, for instance. So I like to keep it coming back to the IRA for that reason.
I like the question, though.
It's a good question, Lisa. Thanks for asking it. Next question. Just raise your hand. All the way in the back.
Way in the back.
Make and Rita run. Run, Rita, run. It sounds like a song.
Jim, this is an awesome event.
Thank you. I mean, look at this.
Yeah. Everyone give yourself a round of applause.
So I'm interested in a buy and hold for cash flow, regular income. And so my understanding is that I shouldn't use a self-directed IRA because the income from that property would need to go back into the IRA. Is that right?
That is correct.
That is correct, but when we think of a buy and hold in a rental property, I think a lot of times we are sold that rental properties are very, very passive. And then you'll get a lot of the experienced investors who will tell you, man, those tenants and toilets really suck, okay? And any money that you think you're making passively on a rental property at some point in time will go back into that rental house. So all that money that you think you're making right now is really not there. You're making money via the equity as the house appreciates in value. So why would I want to do that in a tax-free vehicle would be my argument to it, you know, utilizing the IRA. So anyone else?
Well, just a caution that when you own property in your IRA, please really learn the prohibited transaction rules of Internal Revenue Code Section 4975. You guys should all Google that. It'll put you right to sleep. Because you cannot provide services to your IRA. So if it's your rental property and your IRA owns it, you can't go fix the leaky faucet. You can't go mow the grass. You can't spend the night there. Exactly. Your family can't spend the night in it. You can't use it as your own vacation rental or anything like that. It's truly got to be an investment for the benefit of the IRA. So you just have to, you got to be just very careful about that rule.
Oh, Mary. No, you've got to know the rules. That's what I said just a few minutes ago. You got to know the rules. You got to go to the investment techniques. You got to have deal flow. That's what Mary's talking about is deal flow. She's developed a wonderful system of deal flow that she can loan money right back out again when she gets it in to her IRA, right? And you got to have access to money, or you got to have money or access to money. And that's an important point that I'd like to make right now is that it takes money to make money. Does that everybody agree with that? But here's the secret. It doesn't have to be your money.
There you go. That's the secret. Did you guys catch that? It takes money to make money, but it doesn't have to be your money. It can be other people's money, other people's IRAs.
That's right. So you can do that through partnerships, or you can borrow the money in your IRA, and there's all kinds of ways to get it done with OPI. That's other people's IRAs.
Absolutely. By the way, how many people in here have Quincy's book on self-directed IRAs? Thank you. It's a good group.
Good book.
It is a great, and me too. Rita? Take it.
Go, let's do it.
Bring it.
So when you guys talk about doing private money lending with your IRA, can you do a loan to your own LLC?
Oh.
No.
I'm so glad you asked that.
Multiple exclamation points after that word no. That is clearly prohibited.
Or your mom's LLC or your son's LLC.
Well, you're just no fun.
People try to get real creative. You real estate investors are the most creative people out there.
What happens if you do a prohibited transaction, guys?
According to the rules, if you're caught, it destroys the entire account. It's distributed as of January 1st of the year in which you began to engage in the prohibited transactions. And then you're going to be hit with a tax penalty. You're going to have an extra 10%, and you're also going to get a negligence and a late filing penalty. So you're going to end up probably giving 110% of what was in the IRA to the IRS.
Is that all? All right, we got a question up here, Rita. Oh, take it back there. Go ahead.
Can you speak to UBIT a little bit and how that might impact this?
By the way, that's the syndicator in the back. Wave your hand. I was talking to you earlier. So she's always raising money.
UBIT, here's the way I feel about UBIT. UBIT, you bet. UBIT is unrelated business income tax, so really it's UBTI is unrelated business taxable income according to the IRS, but UBIT is just easier to say. So we break down UBIT into two categories, or actually more, but the two categories are if the IRA owns a business, which doesn't happen a whole lot, but does happen, and owning a business could be either directly or indirectly. If, for example, you invested in your friend's LLC that started a restaurant or something, that's a business. And so that would be taxable to the IRA. It doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, but it would be taxable. Then the other way to get taxed or to have the IRA owe a tax is with debt finance property. And debt finance property is just what it sounds like. It's money that the IRA or a pass-through entity like a LLP, a limited partnership, or an LLC or the LP or whatever, that if it's a pass-through entity, it is going to generate taxable income potentially on debt finance property. And then the other way you can get it is by renting personal property. Now this was always a strange one, right? Because why would they care if you rented a paid for mobile home that was tied down to real estate, was considered real estate under state law. But if it's in a park and you don't own the real estate underneath it, so therefore you're leasing personal property, then it's taxable. Which kind of doesn't make sense, but that's the way it is. Jeff, you had something to say?
Real briefly, regarding UBIT, do not let it stop you.
Oh,
I
did you
would
hear
rather
that?
do a deal and pay
Don't let
UBIT
it
than
stop
not do the
you.
deal. Because it's really not the boogeyman that some people want you to think it is. So I'm really glad you asked that question. Quincy gave us a real good rundown of all the rules. Think about how you're going to structure the deal to keep your UBIT low, but go ahead and get it done. Because I watch people spend so much time trying to scheme and dream ways of not paying anything.
Scheme and dream.
And they're just stuck in permanent procrastination preparation
Wow.
instead of doing something. As my good friend Tom Kroll would say, take massive imperfect action.
There you go. I like your quote, Tom, too. That's awesome.
Yeah, if you want an interesting thought process, I have a different way of thinking about this, and Jeff would appreciate my thought process on this. It's outlined in chapter 8 of the book, and I'm really...
Just because I read your book doesn't mean I remember it.
Well, you should read it again, because
Listen, I wrote 2 books, and I don't know.
because
what
I actually do agree with Jeff, and I slid off into my lawyerly technical stuff, and I apologize for that. But if you want to talk about UBIT and the way I feel about it, come by my booth and we'll have a chat. Because I love the ability to do this. Like, let me give you just one example so that you have an idea, a real world idea. My friend Jody Patrick, who's one of my minor partners in Quest, actually has been doing UBIT deals for years. And like one place he did is he borrowed money to buy an 8-unit apartment complex and did his thing and paid UBIT. When I say paid, he paid UBIT, I mean his IRA paid UBIT. And with that money that he borrowed, he was able to roll that into another property that he paid cash for $175,000, and he later sold that for $200,000, and he still owns the original apartment complex. So to get that done, you do need to know somebody who can prepare the 990T, which is a tax return that the IRA has to file, but it can be a strategy if you understand the rules and you play by the rules. It can be a great strategy, because how many people out there have rental properties that are debt financed?
Oh, of course.
Really?
How many people love debt?
Okay, so
Can I put 2 hands up?
so
that.
properties are debt financed that you own. Why is that? It's because it takes money to make money, right? And if you can do more with money outside of the IRA if you borrow money on it, right? Than you
course.
can if you pay cash for the properties. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And so what's true outside of the IRA is true inside of the IRA too. If you pay the tax and have it as part of your strategy, then it can really benefit you. And I'll stop.
Well, there's ways to build a portfolio inside of a self-directed IRA. I mean, there's people that have done that and then not have tax. You could also do it with a small dollar IRA if you joint venture and do equity participation. It's just a matter of how creative you want to get. We haven't talked about investing small dollar yet, but we can come back to that because I want to hear from
I'm
you
gonna
guys
give Jeff-
first. Who
This
else
is
has a
Jeff,
question?
this is Jeff's specialty here.
I'm coming.
Good. You guys want to talk about that in a few minutes?
Yeah, so I've been doing the self-directed IRA thing for, well, more than 5 or 6 years. But
Good for you.
I did the checkbook LLC for it, and I've been actually buying and flipping properties through it. But I only do it.
the manager?
I'm the owner and the manager. Yes, I am the manager. Yes.
Are you doing it as a business?
I know, and I believe Quest doesn't like that because I talked to you guys one time, and you don't like doing the checkbook LLC. I think, correct?
Going forward, speak in hypotheticals.
Oh.
For the rest of your statement and question, speak in hypotheticals, because I want to make sure that when you express this in a hypothetical sense, if any tax issues arise and anyone from the IRS would ever hear this, I want to be all in a hypothetical sense.
But if I were to start a LLC tomorrow,
There you go.
You or your IRA?
and I wanted to have a checkbook LLC that I wanted to buy properties in, and don't keep them for a year or whatever, that money can stay in there. I know this. Does the UBIT apply to that?
It might, it depends.
Are
The
they
advice
def-
I've gotten is that if you just do a couple a year, it's not a big
That's,
deal.
That's better.
If you're buying consistently and reselling in less than a year consistently, that looks like an active trade or business. If you do 2 1 year and you don't do anything the next year, that's not necessarily looks like a business. But if you're doing 2 every year thinking, oh, I'm only doing 2, it's going to look like a business.
It's a great question.
Exactly, right? Mary's right.
But you know, if you could do one every couple of years, you can really boost your account balances up quickly.
The occasional quick flip inside of an
Or-
IRA-owned LLC, the occasional boosts the balance up, but as long as that LLC is engaged in other activities as well.
So maybe you do some lending, or you have a rental or note. Mix it up a little. It's a good way to be diversified anyways.
I actually had this question from a different person once before, and it actually related to stocks. Did you know that applies the same way if you're trying to flip stocks that quick too? Like if you were buying and selling and trading penny stocks on a
Like a day trader?
right? Same concept. You're using your IRA, you're buying an asset, and you're flipping it very quickly. So the more of those you do, the more red flags you raise. So it doesn't matter necessarily the asset that it is. So
I want to go back to this, you're the manager of your checkbook IRA owned LLC. I can't stand it. I have to say, I have to say, it's a hypothetical. If your IRA hypothetically owned a checkbook LLC and you were hypothetically the manager, I don't like that because you're not allowed to provide services to your IRA. There's been no case law saying whether that is providing services, but I think most of us sitting on this panel would say that is providing services, and you do run a risk of having that declared a prohibited transaction. So be careful. Hire somebody else to manage that and pay them something.
well, yes. I don't like to talk too much about prohibited transaction because it really sucks at sales, you know, but it does, it's kind of important. But also, I wanted to put out there to people, because you brought the subject up of the McNulty case. What Mary said is absolutely right. That's one way they could attack it, as a prohibited transaction. But in the recent case called McNulty versus Commissioner, they basically went through an analysis of the guys, the lady actually, was holding gold in her own home, and she said she separated it out. But basically the IRS said, no, you had unfettered access to that. And that's the problem, is you had unfettered access, therefore it was a distribution from your IRA. And so that's an important point, because that's an argument under Section 408, which is the section that created IRAs in the first place. And that's the first time we've had a case that is under Section 408 saying basically you had unfettered access. Well, the way I was going on this is that the whole purpose of a checkbook control IRA owned LLC is what? Unfettered access. Is that right?
Sure.
So hypothetically, that's the way it is. And basically what the court said is you can't just substitute in an LLC in between you and the custodian and still have unfettered access. That just doesn't work. That's trying to get around the rule. So I can see Jeff's trying to motion over here.
No.
And so that's the potential difficulty of the checkbook control LLC where you're the manager, besides the UBIT implications.
All right, we got another question, Rita? You got a ton of hands up. This is a hot topic, isn't it?
I want to make
It's
one comment on
important to
the
learn.
checkbook control thing real fast. You don't need to change custodians, okay? Quincy, when he started Quest over 20 years ago, has given up more business, all right, with Quest, all right, by saying, look, you can't be your own manager. And in 2017 till now, we've seen Congress and the IRS look at your self-directed accounts more and more and more. And he's the only person that has stood by his point of view on the being your own manager. And the IRS is coming. They are coming for your guys' stuff. You don't need to change custodians, okay? You need to change who is your manager. Put a non-disqualified person in there. You don't want to work with Quest, that's fine, right? There's certain cases where I think you can make a good argument. No, but I think a lot of times people are thinking like, oh, well, you just want us to go to you. You just want to collect fees. You just want, no. Quincy has given up more fees and more clients by standing by his principles behind this. And it is starting now to come full circle, and people are seeing it. In the McNulty case, I think is the first time that we're now going to start to see this on a consistent basis. So be your own manager, but be very careful. And I think most people would recommend that, look, put a non-disqualified person in there to protect your retirement account.
It's an easy switch. Rita,
Sorry,
you
I didn't
wanna
mean
pick?
to.
Oh, go
I
ahead.
just.
Lisa, go ahead. All right.
Okay, this is something totally different than what you guys are talking
That's
about.
okay.
But Rob's,
That's
the Rob's account, is this something that you can touch on? And do we need an LLC to do this?
Take it away.
Okay, yeah, here,
Garrett.
I'll let Jeff start, but I don't like him, but there's a reason.
I started out not being a fan of Rob's, and then our good friend John Heyer has studied it deeply, figured out how to make it work. I'm watching some other clients make it work.
Well, tell us what it
A
is.
ROB stands for Rollover Business Startup. You take traditional 401k or Roth 401k dollars from a previous corporate job and you use that to buy the shares of a brand new C corporation that you're using. Now, if you're going to go do it by buying a Subway franchise or a bunch of other franchises out there that franchisors are going to want to sell you and they want to tell you to go do Rob's, forget it. Say no way. Don't do it. But they want to make you go ahead and do. They want to try and sell you that that's a concept. A rollover business startup where your former 401k money now ends up owning the shares of a brand new C corporation is a good strategy if you know how to run the business. You have to know how to run the business. It's the only time you can ever run the business and pay yourself a salary with something owned by a retirement account. It's the only time you can do it is through that Rob's. It's, yeah. The C Corp is the business that you're running, even though your 401k plan owns all of the shares to it. Am I making sense? Okay.
That's a complicated question.
It's a
Lisa.
complicated question. Quest does not yet do them. Someday, I think Quest will look at it a little more closely. Not trying to put words in your mouth, boss, but just thinking where the world's going. You know, I might have gotten fired off the board. I don't know.
It's not a DIY thing. Don't do that.
No, it's not. And
That's a great point.
Expensive, qualified professional thing. It's worth every dime you pay an expert to do it.
okay, and I'm just going to be uncharacteristically short. And has anybody ever noticed these acronyms? Is that the word? Acronyms that the government comes up with for. And think of what this one said. They call it a ROBS. Okay, that's all I'm going to say.
I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, next question.
Next question.
Let's find an easier question. No, go ahead.
Okay.
Tell us who you are, where you're from.
Sue Veroli, Charlotte, North Carolina.
Yeah.
In that example where you were saying if you have a checkbook control LLC and you're the manager, hypothetically, and you said, get somebody else that's
As a
qualified
manager.
to be the
Yep.
manager right away, instead of yourself.
Yeah, someone not you,
Addition-
spouse, parents, kids.
Okay. Can the IRA or IRS go back and say, well, you were manager before, that was disqualified, and blow up the...
So I think you can make an argument going both ways. I really do, all right? But here's the thing, is if you're saying you want to go back, there's a lot of custodians that offer, where you're allowed to be your own manager. So by you actually taking steps and saying, hey, look, I'm going to do what I can to get this corrected because laws change, bills change. The McNulty case is a brand new case that finished in November of 2022, So, I see a new court case came out. I'm going to go ahead and update what I currently have going on. I think that's a very legitimate thing. Can the IRS always go back? Sure, it's the IRS, But I think by you taking the appropriate steps, it probably helps keep you safe, if that makes sense.
Better than not doing anything to correct the situation.
Good point. That's true. Good point.
That's
Sound
very true.
advice.
Next question.
Next. Go ahead.
Hello, Nicole Simmons here from Richmond, Virginia.
Nicole.
I have a Quest self-directed IRA
Good.
and started lending out of it last year. Wanted to get a clarification question. We did a lend for a non-disqualified party.
There you go.
On Flip, gave them the renovation money, but wasn't really sure exactly what the end number was going to be, so we did a profit percentage going
Okay.
back to the IRA. So
Okay.
Equity.
Yes.
You're earning equity.
correct. Does that
Yeah.
mean I got to pay UBITs?
Oh,
No.
not on
no.
equity.
If you write the note correctly,
If you write that note correctly, or you hire someone like me that knows what they're doing with that, shameless self-promotional plug, the language in the note will say that it is additional interest over and above your baseline interest rate, and then as additional interest, a percentage of the net profit or net equity that borrower recognizes is paid as additional interest to the lender.
Okay, so I didn't have you read it. Sorry about that. But
You broke my heart.
I'm sorry. It did say 33% of the net profit. Did not say additional interest, though.
You sure it didn't say that? You sure the note's not been amended to say that?
Oh,
Smart.
hypothetically speaking, Nicole.
Fantastic. Appreciate y'all. Thank you.
I got to say something, though. That's going to be partly up to state law, because in Texas, I wouldn't call it additional interest. I've looked at this issue and drafted documents myself where it calls it to create an equitable payment, but not interest, because then that one might be considered to be usury, Anybody knows, does anybody not know what usury means? They don't know what? Okay.
Is anyone?
Usury, I'm
used?
inventing a new word, right? Okay. For those of you who want more information, please sign up at my booth.
Hey, and Nicole, I think it's great that you're lending for equity. If you could pick up pieces of
Yeah,
equity.
so anyway,
I will say that, I like that.
I wouldn't call it necessarily additional interest, and how you define profit must be clearly spelled out in the note. So you want to be careful. That's that's not a do-it-yourself version either, Jeff.
And it's good, I mean.
That's why you got to hire a pro that knows what they're doing.
So that's a good question, Nicole.
Hello, Eric Vogel from Atlanta, Georgia.
Hey, Eric.
Hi. I have a lender that
Good.
is in a unique position where he makes too much money and needs to capture some depreciation. I, being a young guy that's very interested in capturing cash flow, would be very willing to give up depreciation, right? So if I were to JV with this lender who actively uses someone like Quest, would he be prohibited from loaning to me again if we go into a JV? Would that be prohibited?
Hypothetically speaking.
Hypothetically, of course.
So
Derek.
Quincy likes to give the depends, but Quincy will most likely also tell you, yes, it is, all right? During the very first transaction, there's a strong argument to be made during the JV that you mentioned that you are not disqualified from one another. It's the second transaction that potentially makes you, notice I'm using the term, potentially a disqualified individual, all right? And we can actually see this, and Quincy likes to use the example of a property management company, right? Over use on those type of things. But I would also say that is not the low-hanging fruit, right? That it's not typically something where the IRS, it seems like, that's what they're going to go after, because there is a lot easier style prohibited transactions for them to see. Is there still an argument to be made? Absolutely, right? But I would argue, once again, it's not the low-hanging fruit. Go ahead, Q. Correct me.
Super
It's certainly
cute.
true that there's a lot of low-hanging fruit in this room, apparently.
These two are nephew and uncle, in case you
I
didn't
don't
catch
work
that.
at Quest, by the way. I just like to poke the bear.
That's why I like having Derek up here, because he's more free than ever.
So, Eric, there is a way to do it. Unfortunately, it's not a front-of-the-room seminar answer, but there is a way to do it. And what they pointed out is a very definite warning. If you're structuring as typical JV, it will look like a partnership, and the second time around, now they're disqualified because they're a partner, unless you pay very careful
Good
attention to the
perspective.
ratios and percentages under what the IRS says in 2649.75.
So Jeff, could he hire you and you could help him through that transaction?
Pardon me?
Could he hire you and you could help him through that?
I could be hired if he's
Potentially.
patient enough to get on my schedule.
All right.
It's probably booked out now. I'm starting to fill in stuff in May. Yeah.
Is that substantially equal economic effects?
No, because one guy's making interest, the other guy's getting depreciation, so they're completely different economic effects.
Wow.
Well, there's a way to do that.
This can go on for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, ask,
This guy is so brilliant, and I've learned so much from him.
100%.
That whenever I start to flash an independent idea, he's like, "You sure you want to go that way?"
For the record, Quincy has taught all of us on the self-directed IRA.
Who in the room agrees?
Here, here.
Thank you, Quincy.
Another question?
Hey, guys, we were scheduled for 2 panels, but this is so interactive, I want to keep it going. Is that okay?
Woohoo!
All right.
One here and then one
All
here
right,
now.
thanks, Rita. Now, I want some easy questions, too, like, how do I get started? What should I do first?
Go to the Quest website, start your
Does it matter if I make my contribution every year? Ask the easy ones, too. Go ahead, Barb.
Sorry, this is not easy.
I figured not with
Maybe
you and
could be.
Kevin.
Could the potential problem with the person who was the manager of their checkbook LLC. Could that be avoided by having the IRA owned in a trust?
No, it's the same thing. Nothing changed. LLC trust, it doesn't matter in that
It's
specific
just
case.
trustee instead of
Even
member,
though there's a
right?
trustee.
It's trustee
in the
versus
middle.
member.
Yeah, so basically, the general rule is you can't do in two steps what you can't do in one. So Quincy alluded to this earlier. When you're just putting an intervening step of an LLC or a trust in there, but you're still the one as the IRA owner who's in charge of everything, it's the same concept. You just have to be very, very careful. I personally would never do it that way. I would never be my own manager of my IRA-owned LLC or trust.
How many people
And
in
I
the
would hire
room-
somebody and pay them at least something to manage it.
How many of you have an IRA that's in a checkbook or a trust, one or the other? Okay.
So-
Solo 401k if you qualify.
Let me explain it from this perspective. Y'all might figure out that I've learned a little bit from Quincy. And I practice law for a living, and Q, I'm still learning, buddy, okay? I'm still learning. I'm still learning. I've learned a lot from Quincy. A lot of my practice is self-directed IRA-related deals. I make sure that the trust owned by my IRA has a trustee who is completely non-disqualified, disinterested third party. He has veto authority over the deal. That's how careful I am, and you see how close to the gray I like to play.
Okay. Jenny's got a question. Rita, you have, oh, go ahead.
Dee Hammond
Hey,
from
Dee.
Michigan. So this is probably going to be one of those easy questions.
Good.
So Derek mentioned passing like the fees along to the borrower.
Uh-huh.
So how exactly do you do that? Is it points or the interest you charge or something else?
All of the above, yeah. I mean, okay.
I mean, basically, as a lender, when my IRA lends, I don't pay the lawyer's fees. You know, my IRA doesn't pay the lawyer's fees, doesn't pay any of the closing fees, doesn't pay the title insurance fees, doesn't pay anything. The borrowers pay that. It's built into their numbers that they can still make money.
It's a good answer.
I would say, I know when I've done it before, it's typically around $1,000, right? It's $125 to do a deal, right, from the IRA. Call it $350 a year, another $500 to $600 to draft up the documents. You can't spend $1,000 to cover my fees, and you want to borrow $100,000 from me? Find someplace else, you know? And that seems to be pretty straightforward, and just wrap it in the note.
Okay, has everybody heard the golden rule?
He who holds the gold sets the rule.
That's right. The biblical version I like very much. You know, do unto others as you would have others do unto you, correct? Everybody familiar with that, right? Well, the golden rule of lending is actually slightly different than that. It's he who has the gold makes the rules.
See? How'd I learn that, Quincy?
And if you want to borrow my gold, you got to follow my rules. And if that means you have to pay fees, you have to pay fees, okay?
So let me just one last.
And Jeff, you and I talk about this because you're my lawyer on all my lending.
Well, and Jim, you might have noticed a closing instruction letter that accompanies the lending documents coming out of my office that says the borrower pays for the lender's title policy, they pay for the closing protection letter, they pay my fee for the doc preparation, they pay it all. And the smart borrowers figure that into their deal. And there's some smart borrowers in this room that figure it into their deal. It's that simple. But I start with the closing instructions so that the title company knows this is how it all looks on the settlement statement.
And it's important. I mean, I don't have any other fees, zero other fees than Jeff's stock fees, really. And title insurance, really, it's about it.
But you don't pay them.
I don't.
Yeah.
And if you're worried about the minimal quest fees,
Minimal question.
you
They're
know,
like, those things are like Pac-Man. They just
you
keep
know,
going.
if you got that kind of concern, that you probably shouldn't be doing that deal.
I would agree. Good point. Who else has a question? Easy question, hard questions, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Michelle Miralles from Richmond, and I have an easy question. So I have been a wholesaler for a year, so I'm still newer to pretty much anything and everything. But we have a regular IRA that's my husband's that we want to convert to a self-directed IRA. So do you guys have any tips, any recommendations, any advice before we do it?
Well, one thing is we don't give tax, legal, investment, or deal structuring advice. But yes, we have,
But Derek can.
no, my assistant Evelyn, who's with me, and who's manning the booth there. Evelyn, are you in the room? And
Ask her to come in.
so anyway, she can help you
Perfect, thank you.
rather than just take up the time.
But there's one thing I don't want you to do. I don't want you to move the money to a self-directed IRA custodian and then let it sit there and do nothing with it.
Well, let's talk about
Move
that.
it over when you've got a deal in your sights. Okay?
One more question.
Could be part of
It
the panel.
doesn't have that much money in it. It has around 25.
Oh, I can do lots of deals with that.
Okay, so.
Smallest deal I ever did was $300.
Okay, perfect.
So give me a couple of examples of a small dollar IRA investment.
I love doing 10 for 12 deals. I will lend out $10,000. You pay me back 12 payments of $1,000 over the next 12 months.
A 10 for 12, that's a little
10 for
different
12.
variation to Leon's 10.
Yeah,
Where's-
I mean,
where is
Leon and I probably learned it from the same guy who learned
There's
it from the
Leon.
same guy who learned it from
Hey,
Henry
we're
Dvorkin
talking
in
10 for
Wichita
12
Falls.
here.
This is Evelyn, by the way. She's the one that can get you all the info.
She is the solo 401k princess. New name,
And she'll be
right?
talking with.
She's better than Taylor Swift.
You know, and I will say, this may sound like I'm self-promotion or whatever.
Directed?
Self-directed,
A self-directed promotion?
shameless, but I've actually wrote a book. Did I mention that? And it has lots of examples of small dollar, or how you can invest small dollar IRAs, and with options and all kinds of,
Options are good. Where's Bill Cook?
Not magic options, though.
Oh, he left. All right,
Yeah.
Bill's great at options.
yeah, it's called Self-Directed IRA Secrets
Could you get a
Revealed.
copy of it and just show it to everybody?
It's at their booth.
Yeah,
It's at-
she's gonna bring it out.
Yeah, somebody's got a copy of it over there behind it.
By the way, he made a great donation for the auction, including his book. It's signed, and it includes setting up an account. It's a $1,500 value, actually, so be watching for that. In the back, go ahead.
Last question,
Oh.
question.
Go ahead, Forrest. Forrest has one. Yeah, that's all right. Last one. Tell us, Forrest and I go to church together.
Hey, yes,
Sir.
Forrest Clark from Richmond, Virginia. What I'm wondering is, a simple question, I hope, but to move funds into a self-directed IRA, what I'm wondering is,
From the chapel.
what is kind of, I know it depends,
the guy
right?
who
All
wanted
over
me.
the place, what your rate
Goes
of
to the chapel.
return or what your rate for lending is going to depend on who you lend to.
Right.
But my big concern is, how do I keep that money rolling into the next deal and the next deal, right? Because 12% only invested for 6 months of the year is 6%.
Yeah.
So what I'm wondering is, how do you keep these deals going so that when the money comes
That
back
is
in,
a
it's ready
common
to go
question I've been getting a lot lately. I talked to Derek about this. Last week we
We all
talked
got
about this.
opinions. My opinion
a
is
great
that
question.
your network is your net worth, and that's what you do, is you establish a network. I used to have trouble keeping the money active, but after you do a few deals and have few trusted repeat borrowers, they come to you, you don't go after them. But it does take a network. That's one of the
That's
elements
the
of
importance
success.
of an event like DealMaker, guys, and why we create atmospheres for networking.
Forrest, you said something that I need to address for the benefit of everyone in the room. Do not make a loan just based on interest rate. Do not allow a wannabe borrower to lure you between the contractual sheets with a high interest rate. You may never see your money again. You've got to look at it from the underlying collateral. You've got to look at it from the credibility of that borrower. You've got to look at it from their experience. I would rather put my money out at 10% with a trusted, reliable, proven borrower than put it out for
Amen,
18% on a brand-new knuckle-dragging newbie that's never done a deal before.
Well said. Now, you have the book.
That's
Wait,
exactly right.
go ahead. I want to show the book here, Quincy.
There's the book, there's the book.
Go ahead,
Quick
Mary.
read,
You
quick
can
read.
jump in.
By the way, Mary's prompting me to self-promote again. For one thing, private capital, I cover that in the book too, I'll just say that. But the book can be bought at Amazon or any other bookseller that's a national bookseller. You can buy the book. You can buy the book for $20 at the booth, but we're going to run out of copies, although we may have some more sent. But it's available. So, Mary, I've done my duty.
Good job, Q. Okay, I just want to say one more thing about how do you find borrowers if you want to lend your money, and it's absolutely at places like this. Every single borrower I've pretty much ever found, and I haven't even been looking for them. They find me because I just let people know I do lending, right? And think about it, in this room, 265 people or however many it is, the majority of them are doing the deals and need the money. There's way more deals than there are people funding. So the people who are the lenders are in great need because everybody needs money to do their deal. So you just need to let people know you do it. I'm not a hard money lending company at this point. It's all just been my own money over the last 20 years. So I want to actually meet the person. It's not just an application online for me yet. Getting there maybe. But anyway, and so I meet people at these events. I don't have much time to talk to them, but then we schedule follow-up calls. We do a Zoom, and I get to know them. Last year, I met someone here. No, she heard me speak on a Zoom call, and she contacted me, and we've had a couple of Zoom calls, but it took a year for me to feel comfortable and have the money ready. I just funded 2 loans for her, totaling almost $700,000 for these 2 loans. Now, that's risky, but I've done a lot of due diligence on her and the properties and her history and all that, and I'm very excited about having a new, potentially what I think is going to be a great borrower. And I met her because she heard me say I'm a private lender, and she reached out to me.
Love it.
Yep.
All right, guys. Rita, come on up. Ellie, come on up.
I'm right here.
Come on. Ellie, no, we're going to lunch in a second. Thank you, guys. Thank you guys so much. It was really good.